What's up, ladies and gentlemen? I am Brad Browning, and you are watching my latest and greatest relationship advice video. And this particular video is going to be one that's specifically for anyone out there who's worried that their marriage might be on the brink of collapse. So if you are worried about divorce, if you're wondering whether your marriage is doomed, or if you just want to know, whether there's still hope to turn things around before it's too late, well, keep watching because that's what I'm going to talk about right here in this video. Now, before I dive into it, guys, I should quickly mention that my online quiz tool, which you can take for free after this video at marriageguy.com/quiz, is one of the best ways to evaluate the health of your marriage and figure out, whether it can still be saved. Basically, you answer a series of questions, and based on those answers, you're going to see a detailed analysis of your current situation and your odds of turning things around in your marriage, as well as a series of personalized recommendations based on your answers. Quiz takes maybe 5 minutes at most. It's completely free, and again, it's at marriageguy.com/quiz. All right, now, guys, the 5 signs that I'm going to cover in this video in the next few minutes here are actually based on proven science. So this stuff, it isn't my opinion. Researchers have actually been studying this stuff, marriage psychology, relationship dynamics, that kind of thing, for years now. And these 5 signals indicate a marriage that's likely to end in divorce with an accuracy rate over 90%, which is really, when you think about it, pretty incredible. Now, a lot of the research is based on studies done by Robert Levinson at the University of Washington and John Gottman, who you've probably heard about from some of my other videos, of the Gottman Institute in New York. And those two guys have been spent 30 plus years studying this stuff in labs and in clinical counseling settings as well. So, credit to those two gentlemen and all the other academics who've studied and worked in this field. Okay, now let's dive straight into the 5 signs of an impending divorce. So the first sign of trouble in a marriage is criticism or complaining. Basically, this just refers to situations where one partner gets upset at the actions or behaviors of their spouse, and then they place the blame for it on them or their personality generally. So for instance, let's say that you aren't really the type to help much with, housework, chores around the house, and you rarely clean up the kitchen after dinner. If your spouse responded by saying, you never help with the dishes, you're such a lazy slob, that would be the kind of criticism that often can indicate that a marriage is unhealthy. Secondly, and this one goes often hand in hand with criticism like I just talked about, sign number 2 is defensiveness. So if we stick with the example that I just mentioned where your spouse calls you a lazy slob, a defensive reaction to that would be if you said in response, something like, give me a break, you're such a mess in the kitchen. If I cooked dinner, there would be barely any dishes at all. In other words, defensiveness is when one spouse responds to their partner's critical remarks by turning things around and attempting to shift the blame back on their partner. Sign number 3 that a marriage is heading for divorce is contempt. Now, the word contempt can actually really mean a lot of things, but in this case, it's basically anytime one partner has a negative opinion of their spouse and believes themselves to be superior. So for instance, statements like, you're a moron, or you're just clueless, aren't you? Those are both really good examples of this sort of toxic contempt. In fact, this is actually what researchers believe to be the single biggest predictor of divorce. So, of course, this contempt is one that you really want to address immediately if it does become an issue in your marriage. All right, and on to sign number 4, which is actually pretty straightforward, and that is emotional withdrawal or stonewalling. So in other words, if your partner simply becomes distant, doesn't really appear to be listening or taking in what you're saying when you try to bring up a point of contention or a complaint with them. This is actually most often associated with men, and studies have indeed actually shown that around 85% of the time, it's the male partner in a marriage who's guilty of emotionally withdrawing. Sometimes that's because men are unwilling to confront problems or accept their partner's criticism, and sometimes it's more a result of his wife having unfair or unreasonable expectations, or kind of bringing things up in a toxic sort of nagging way. Regardless of whether it's the man or the woman who's actually doing this stonewalling, though, it is bad news for the future of any marriage when it does happen regularly. All right, and finally, let's talk about sign number 5, which actually tends to be more common among married couples who've been together for a decade or more. The other 4 ones that I just covered, they can really happen at any time in a marriage, but they tend to usually begin fairly early on. And this final sign of marriage that shows up generally after a decade or more is a low ratio of positive to negative interactions. All right, I know what you're thinking at this point. Yeah, but what does that actually mean, Brad? Well, I could really expand on this one and spend 20 minutes talking about it. But essentially, a happy and healthy married couple has an average of 5 positive interactions Things like laughing at a joke together, complimenting one another, cuddling or kissing, providing support and encouragement. They have 5 of those for every negative encounter, which is things like, criticizing, lying, arguing, and so on. Now, an unhealthy marriage, on the other hand, tends to have a lot more of those negative encounters for every positive interaction. So basically, if you and your spouse get along and enjoy one another's company the vast majority of the time, and you only argue or get upset at one another, once in a while, then your marriage has a healthy ratio of positive to negative encounters. But, unfortunately, for a lot of you watching this video right now, that ratio in your marriage is probably far lower than that ideal 5-to-1 ratio that researchers have found to be the magic number for the typical happy marriage. Relax though, don't panic quite yet, folks. Even if you recognize all 5 of these signs in your own marriage, for most of you, you could very well still be able to avoid divorce and dramatically improve the dynamics of your marriage before it's too late. Now, how do you do that? Well, to be honest, that's a really big topic that I can't really cover here. Of course, one of my first recommendations is to register for my best-selling Mend the Marriage program, which you can actually try risk-free for 60 days starting right now. The program is basically a comprehensive guide to turning your relationship around, even if your spouse is unwilling to put in the effort or has already said that they definitely want a divorce. And it's going to give you a clear plan to put the marriage back on the right track. And you can get all the details about the program and sign up at my website, marriageguy.com. Now, whether you decide to sign up for Mend the Marriage or not, there is one thing that you absolutely must not do if you want to fix your marriage and prevent divorce, and that is to do nothing. Look, guys, most couples wait far too long before they do anything about their broken marriages. And quite frankly, things rarely get better on their own. In fact, the longer you wait before you take action, the lower the chances of a happy ending for you and your marriage. So please, guys, if you're watching this video and you've seen several of the signs that I've talked about in this video in your own marriage, at the very least, take 10 minutes to watch the full video on my website, marriageguy.com. It's completely free. There's a men's and a women's version. And in that video, you're going to learn a few tips that you can start implementing today that could make the difference between, divorce and living happily ever after. Now, I sincerely hope that this video is going to help some of you out there save your marriage while you still can. It is a really tough situation to be in, so I definitely sympathize with anyone who is facing a marriage on the brink. And guys, as always, if you have a quick question, any feedback, leave it in the comments below and I will get back to you personally as soon as I can. And that is it for now, so we'll see you in the next video.